Resolution 32.
Amending, revising, or changing rules of the Board of Supervisors, the Safety and Rules Committee offered the following and moved its adoption. Resolved that effective January 1, 2018, and the rules of the Chenango County Board of Supervisors being hereby established as follows, and the amended rules of the board follow.
Seconded by Mr. Mastro. Discussion. Mr. Heisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Correct me if I'm wrong, the impetus of this motion is poor attendance at committee meetings causing a problem with quorums. Is that right?
That's a part of it, yes.
Okay.
The other part was that historically there's been a number of times when there hasn't been any business for this committee to do, so the meetings have been canceled. We went back 5 years, and there were 13 times in the last 5 years that Ag Buildings and Grounds has not met for those two reasons, quorum or lack of business.
And if I had to guess, and it's just nothing more than a guess, Fred, but if I had to guess, out of those 13 times, probably 2 were quorum, 11 lack of agenda.
Okay, well, here we go. I don't know why, but this puts me in the remembrance of the old W.C. Fields quote that said, "I wouldn't want to be in a club that would have me as a member." Apparently, a number of us have bad behavior in terms of getting to these meetings. But again, if you have a problem, as all counselors will tell you, you have to identify the problem before you can do anything about it. So my question was, you look at the minutes and you see, yes, someone was absent, but I didn't realize that this was such an overriding issue. And so typically, if you have people under your service and they are not doing things correctly, it would seem like the logical thing to do would be to bring that to the attention of all of us, especially the offending members, and set up some sort of a strategy to change that behavior. This proposal, just eliminating a committee, doesn't change that behavior at all. As a matter of fact, I would argue that if you have 7 people on a committee, if you've got a choice of going or not going, you say, heck, well, I got 7 people, so they won't even miss me. So I don't think that will address that issue very well. Secondly, putting more duties on the planning department, which we just had a discussion about how much more active we think the planning department needs, that would seem to me to be a little counterproductive too. But the bottom line for me, and many of us do live in rural communities, this will not come as a shock, but Smithville is apparently kind of a rural district, and the people there, to us, agriculture is still a very important part of the whole ball of wax. And I would also argue that if we ever could get our act together in terms of what we talked about for planning, and we start marketing what we have rather than trying to do this pie in the sky stuff, part of that will be agriculturally related. So I cannot in good conscience cast a vote for yes in this situation that in any way, shape, or form would give the agricultural and farming community the idea that I'm giving up on their issues. And I think that's what this message sends. I know we can argue, and the world will keep spinning, but I think this is the wrong message to send to Chenango County farmers and anyone in agriculture.
Okay, can I respond to some of your questions?
Sure.
As far as people's willingness to come to meetings, that's a commitment that the individual makes. Every one of the supervisors in this room is elected by state statute, and we as Chenango County cannot punish them for how they do their job. The idea of pay has come up. All of the supervisors are paid by local law. Each year we adopt a local law that pays the supervisors, and there's no mention in that local law of attendance. They're still fulfilling their job. As far as agriculture is concerned, the proposal is to change the name of the Planning and Economic Development into Agriculture and Economic Development. the activities that are added to the Planning and Economic Development Committee that have to do with agriculture, everyone that has to do with agriculture, for the most part, are just funding situations. We currently do, Planning Department currently takes care of the ag districts. Shane has been doing that for a number of years. Soil and water resource conservation is simply a pass-through. We provide them money. We do not micromanage that organization. They come historically once a year for a budgetary problems or issues. Cooperative Extension the same way. They run their own business. We do send representatives to the Cooperative Extension Board, but as far as micromanaging that, Chenango County does not. And forest land and conservation that kind of runs it. We do have some forest land here in Chenango County, but that really, in my estimation, ought to be a planning issue anyway. As I say, I try not to say this very often, but I don't think there's anybody here that's been in agriculture much longer than I have. Depended on it for my life. And I'm proud to say I've been quite successful at doing that. But it wasn't necessarily, I'm certainly not going to go out and try to kick that from Steve. But I just think that we will do a better job of serving Chenango County, but with this new plan than we have been doing in the past, just by making certain that these committees can function.
Can I respond to your response?
Go ahead.
I hear you, but I also, it sounds like there wasn't much of an effort made. The only recollection I have was about 2 years ago you explained that if you were not at a meeting, your vote would be counted as no. And that seemed like that was at least 2 years ago. So, and I understand from your explanations that, and I'm not talking about being punitive. I mean, I don't think, I look around this room, I don't see, 23 little kids. I see 23 pretty sophisticated adults. And we all know that since most of us have gray hair or no hair, that we're at the age where medical issues and stuff could affect our attendance. And I understand all of that. But I see that we, in the preferred agenda, we designated a newspaper, a couple of different newspapers. The point that a lot of people will say, well, the voters will decide if we supervisors are doing our job, and if we're not, the voters. Well, how do they know? So one of my proposals would be to modify this behavior, would be to go to the newspapers and offer to publish a couple times a year the attendance records of their representatives, so that people will know that that isn't punishing them, it's a report. And so therefore the voters will know what we're doing. And it just seems like there were a lot of steps and stages that could have been done prior to just plopping this on our lap and saying we're going to abandon the committee.
Dr. Wanzel.
I just withdraw. It's okay.
Planner.
Yeah, I think at our last meeting there was a mention of some savings, and I don't see where this alignment really puts anything in the wrong place. I think the people can handle it. I would have maybe liked a little more of a heads up, but it looks like it should work, and the cost savings were mentioned. I don't know if they're significant, if they all count.
The cost savings probably are just mostly an overhead, drill clerk's time, RC's office time. It's not going to be a monumental thing. It's not going to save us a bit.
No, but I guess every little bit counts. I agree with some of what Fred said. I personally think some of our meetings probably ought to be a little bit longer. In my experience, I hate to say I've been here too long, I probably have. I can remember coming back to lunch for many a meeting, including board meetings, where things were discussed in more detail, and now it seems people get irked if it gets to be 10 or 12. And, maybe there's a little more dedication required to some of these meetings. That's what we get the big money for. And, you know, I think Dennis said, you know, you'll get to see a few more things, which is true. So maybe you've got a little bit longer committee meetings. There are things I often wish that the committees would get a little more credence than they seem to get on some issues. When things are sent up, they seem to come back. And, that's my
Mrs. Ireland?
I attended a meeting of the Ag and Development Committee last week, and most of those people that are on that board were a bit concerned because their feeling was, gosh, doesn't agriculture count? They were really not happy. I showed them the paper where the different things that the Ag Committee does would be divided up with the other ones. And one of their biggest concerns was stuff going to the planning. And their opinion was there's so much going on in planning, is agriculture going to get pushed by the wayside? And that seems to be somewhat of a concern. My big thing was whether it's good or bad, it doesn't look good in this county that we're kind of pushing agriculture off to the side. And yeah, maybe there are times we don't do a whole lot in the committee meetings, but it just does not look good.
Chairman, when you first approached me about this, you know, your concern was, you kept saying that, you know, lots of times there isn't a quorum. And I also look back in my records, the year being committee chairman, and same thing, we only did not meet 2 times, and it was strictly because there was no agenda and not quorum. And I agree with Fred, by making our committees bigger, the people that don't attend, just give them a little more reason not to attend. But, so I'm not really sure still, I'm not convinced exactly why we're reorganizing everything, but my big concern too is, like Marion says, I don't think it looks good for Chenango County to say, oh, we're getting rid of Ags, Buildings, and Grounds Committee, because that's the headline that I see.
Sure. Yeah, I guess, you know, I would, you know, just, everything's got a spin, but it would seem to me that, like, the importance of agriculture cannot be made less in the county. We are backbone agricultural community. A lot of our development in the future will be agricultural. And it just seems to me, by giving agriculture its due, it would be in planning. And planning is supposed to be the place where we decide how we're going to go forward, what we're going to emphasize, what we're going to see as important, who are we going to support. And I think we do that by putting them right up front. Ag and planning are, in my terms, hand in hand. The people showing up to committee meetings, the quorum doesn't change. You still got to have a quorum, whether you get 7 members or 11 members, you still need a quorum to have a committee meeting. And I just, you know, the whole idea, we got a $90 million budget, and Pete mentioned this before, and I'm just saying, we have a $90 million budget with 6 committees that we would have as a result of this. You have an intimate knowledge of a third of that every day. You know what's coming in front of you every day. And that's something that's not happening now. We're dividing it up. I think the people in our towns are going to be better served. You're going to be more exposed to what's happening in the county and have a better thing. And I think Pete's making a good point. Maybe sometimes it should be a little longer. Maybe we should think a little harder when we're there. So I think in the end, this is a good move.
Mr. Manager?
Dennis, I just find it unusual that would come out of your mouth, because you're the one that has expressed that you're disappointed with planning's results, and now they're going to put more on planning.
But at the same time, I think after a year, it looks like to me planning has turned a corner. And I know that the paper that was drafted and put out about the objects that the planning committee wants to go, I think it's a giant step forward. And I think now's the point where if they're willing to do the work, let's give them more to do.
Mr. Graves?
Yes, Charlie, not surprisingly, I don't think this is a good idea because of the way it came about. I don't think we sat around here and discussed committee attendance. I don't think we discussed quorum. We didn't discuss what each committee is purview, what it's doing, how they could do it better. This just came from the top down. We're going to make a change. and now we'll ratify it in 2 quick meetings, one a week ago, one today. And I think that this is the kind of thing where we could have a very good discussion about our committee structure. Which committee does what? But we're not doing that whatsoever. We're just acting right now. We're taking agriculture, putting in planning that was under the gun 2 months ago for not doing as much planning as it should have been doing. We heard just earlier in this meeting that planning should be doing something else here. And now we're just going to get agriculture and planning. The other thing is I think that when you have committees of like 8 or 9 members, Public Works would be a good example, very good people at it, but how many of us does it take to say, we're going to approve the low bid that Sean recommends? I mean, it's like, of course we are. We're not really initiating anything for the county there. We're basically okaying a plan that's already been planned. So I think this is going to happen here. Agriculture's going to put in here, but it wasn't because we sat around here and said, let's look at our committee structures. Which committee needs more to do? Which needs less? How can we restructure it? We've never had that discussion. We have this on the board now as we already have a proposal, but this isn't the right time to decide which committee is going to do what.
Yeah, I said earlier, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I do agree with Tom and the others that this is not how we should have gotten there. And with that in mind, I would make a motion to refer the idea back to the appropriate committee so maybe we have a little more time to digest it.
Just
The
for
table
clarification, this did come out of safety and rules, it's the appropriate committee.
Well, it never mentioned in planning, and I'm on that, and it was never mentioned in ag, or, what are we, public works.
Oh, no,
Yes, it
we're
was.
talking about DPW.
I disagree.
I'm totally on board with Pete and with Tom. We may come to the same ultimate decision. I agree with Tom. Just don't like the way this was done. I don't like the optics of it, and I don't see any reason to rush to this. What I would propose is that we either look at personnel or safety and rules to come up with some sort of strategy to change the behavior, at least in terms of the culture of supervisors not attending. Come up with some sort of plan, give it 6 months, review it at 3 months, the plan working, and then if we are not happy, come back to this kind of proposal.
Mr. Flanagan, did you make a motion to refer this back?
I did.
A second.
Second to that? Okay, for the referral, move this back to the appropriate committee, which in my estimation is safety and rules, because they deal with the rules of the board. Any discussion on that referral? None, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.